Hello. Hi, the Spice Girls. How are you?
Hello!
Spice Girls is back!
Finally, I miss you so badly.
It's been so long ago, but it's only like 10 minutes ago that we were together in another.
But we don't talk like this, right?
I know. Why are we all wearing blue?
Why are
Yeah,
we wearing blue?
tell us, Rina. We're following your leadership today.
Why we are wearing blue is because it's a women major group color campaign. Right now, we're in the middle of the high level political forum on 2030 agenda, right? So every day, the women major group will have this color campaign that is actually highlighting the systemic issue that we are having right now, and then what is our demands. So for today, blue is for end militarism, colonialism, and occupation. That's why.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
in Palestine.
Yes.
Viva Palestina Libre!
Yeah. Okay, great. We have a great topic for today because, it was by popular demand. We were thinking, oh yeah, let us go through our brainy agendas of the campaign of campaigns, and people were like, but what is the UN? How can I access the UN? How do people engage in the UN? If you are at the UN, then you work at the UN. So I don't understand. And it was like, yeah, right. Actually, they are smarter than us. So we figured, let us go by the demand. So today we are explaining the UN with pears and mangoes. But actually, we decided, because we're very irreverent, we're not going to go with pears and mangoes. Rina has an apple and mangoes. Tete has mangoes and bananas.
I have lots!
So nobody has pears. Hopefully, you in the audience have some compassion for pears, and you're also bringing your pears to the session. And we're also having Sharpies of different colors. I hope you are also bringing your Sharpies. So let's draw while we're talking. We can draw a face in the banana or the mango or whatever we want. We suggest that you use a fruit with a thick skin so that you can eat it later and you do not get intoxicated afterwards. So
I want
yeah.
to eat my apple. It's okay.
Tomorrow!
I will eat my apple later on.
I'm starting
Whoa.
my discussion with the UN while I'm drawing the face in my banana. So, why are we talking the UN? And this is an issue that I think we take for granted because people hear about United Nations and we think, well, the United Nations is a very important body at the global configuration, but people do not question, or rather, people at the moment question, why is the UN there? There is a meme in Mexico saying, the UN is that friend of yours that when you're going through your biggest life crisis tells you, don't be sad, don't cry. That useless. And so the question is, if it is really useless, then why the UN? What is the UN? Why do we care about the UN? Is it, if we are activist radicals wanting for system change, is it really useful to get to know the UN rather than going to take pictures as a tourist? Is there an added value? Just before we start on going, what is the UN? What do you think? Is there an added value to the UN at this point?
Who are you asking?
Palestine! So, whoever who wants to take it.
Is there an added value to the UN? Well, I think there will always be an added value to the UN based on its original aspiration. When I was trying to research what the UN is all about, and reminding us that now is the 75th year anniversary of the United Nations, I was like thinking, what is the relevance of the UN today? How can I explain to my kids, why will mama be away for 2 3 weeks going to UN meetings? So when I said the original aspiration, I'm thinking, the fundamental values and principles with which the UN was founded 75 years ago. It starts the preamble by saying, "We the people." Emilia, you look so disinterested.
No, I'm listening with the people, but I'm also drawing my face in my banana.
So the
No,
UN preamble starts with "We the people." So it's like, okay, it speaks to me. I'm part of the people. So when you hear about it, it's about um, averting wars, affirming human rights, justice, respect for obligations, promoting social progress, better standards of life, freedom, international cooperation, solidarity. So, all of those nice sounding words are supposed to be the foundations of the United Nations. So, I feel 75 years after, it's going to be more relevant for everybody, for the people, if we try and work to reclaim the original vision of the UN. Over to you, Rena.
woohoo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally agree with what you said. That, and I think that in that context, we really need to claim the UN, like really belong to the peoples, right? So we don't want like those who are actually not representing the people be the one who actually drive the agenda or be there. For instance, like there's a lot of civil society that might not coming from the people or people oriented or pro people. Some of them is actually pro corporation, pro government. So that's why it's also important, I think, for us to always claim that space. We want to make the UN belong to the people.
Yes,
Yes.
but this is the big, the small details, right? Because on the one hand, the UN, in my views, is the most expensive catering service in the world. They always said, no, we serve to the member states, we serve to countries, we are catering of the, let us say, the devices and the agreements of member states. And then you already talked, both of you, about we the people is like the peoples, and there are other actors like corporations and stuff. Do we feel represented by our governments? There is a discussion as well as governments versus countries, so administrations come and go. But then the UN as a whole is really not necessarily that independent at the moment, because they became too subservient of the let us say the pragmatics and the short term views of specific administrations and powerful, especially powerful countries, but also, yeah, narrow-minded people in governments, right? So they stopped looking long-term. And so now the UN is, on the one hand, a political body, and on the other, technical. So the technical is well more respected, I think, no? Those agencies on the ground, regions, countries, helping support public policy, advising countries, sometimes helping fundraise, and sometimes also competing with governments and social movements with the funding. And sometimes they take it away after movements have managed to get some funding. They're like, the UN is like, oh, we're administering that funding for you, and they remove it from our hands. But then that's a different discussion. Going back to the political, so there is this mandate of human rights, peace and security, sustainable developments, humanitarian development. So that those are like bigger agendas for the UN. And the question is, are we really fulfilling them when we come to the political debate of the mandate that the UN should steer for governments, right? And I think that is, let us dismiss some misconception about people when they say, oh, something is happening, why is the UN not doing anything? It's not doing anything because it is the assembly of countries deciding what are we going to do, and it is in against the interest of the countries to do something about anything. So it's not that the UN is autonomous in a way to decide on what to do. So that is like a first confusion. So this is why an activist needs to push or try to convince member states individually or by negotiating groups to shift their position so that they can try to steer the process towards a new outcome. And this is what activists engaging in the UN do. We are not part of the UN. We are not part of any national delegation or official negotiating group, but we are observers and we are assisting to the process. And we're seeing that all of the countries are saying the most radical, absurd things in the world, and it is our work to try to give them arguments, reasonings, and sometimes reading the negotiating text and say, no, you can delete that, strike this, and say this instead. So that is where we the people's will that Tete was mentioning comes in mind, right? Like external actors like trade unions, indigenous peoples, feminists, youth, aging people, etc., can engage in the UN and try to convince member states and actors at the negotiating table that the outcome could be different. So I don't know what you want to add about that.
That's the thing, no? When you go to the UN, you immediately get the feel that I'm not part of this, and the minute you step inside the UN buildings, it's like it's governments who are talking to each other. Whatever little space that civil society and other actors have, it's a space that was the outcome of struggles, was the outcome of civil society and different groups asserting their right to have a say in development. Yeah, because when you go there, it's number one, member states, governments talking to each other, and then you would have international institutions. Usually, it's international financial institutions who are very visible in the UN, and then comes civil society and other stakeholders. So it wasn't that way before, no. But I think it was in 1992. I wasn't born yet then, no. That civil society and other stakeholders were invited and allowed to participate. But Rina, you're laughing.
No. What do you mean that you weren't born yet in 1992? How old are you really? Like you weren't born and as activists or as advocates?
No, let me qualify. I haven't been born yet as an advocate or a lobbyist. I've always been an activist. I've always been a campaigner. That's why the first time I set foot in the UN, I felt lost. It's like, this is not my space. This is not my people. And you really get that feel because it's so, it's not very inviting because number one, you have to be an accredited organization for you to be able to get one of those UN passes, the UN IDs. For you to be able to be accredited, you have so many steps to follow, documents to submit, etc., etc. And usually, the UN meetings are held in New York, in Geneva, in other places where you would need resources, you would need visa, you would need everything just to be able to get there. But then finally, when you go there, you have to dress nicely also, no? Because there's a certain dress code.
Let's talk about the dress code. We should talk about the dress code later.
Indeed. So when you finally step foot on the building, you realize that you are just there basically to observe. you know, if you want, you can attend some sessions, at regional and global processes. You may access documents, and there is a small window for your voice to be heard through constituencies. Now that's another universe in itself, no? And then you can engage with the delegates. So
Ted,
in
you are very technical. Go
no, I'm
back.
not. I'm actually thinking about what I wore the first time I went to the UN.
What you were? What was it?
I think I wore a t-shirt that says greed economy because that was my first time, in 2012 in Rio when the governments were talking about the 20th anniversary of the Earth Summit, the Rio Summit of 1992. So as I told you, I'm mostly an outside campaigner. So I didn't know what was the proper decorum going inside the UN building. So that was what was on my shirt. No to greed economy because they were talking about green economy. Yeah.
So you were saying that you first is actually when 1992 in Rio, or or Rio plus 20 in
I told you I wasn't born yet in 1992. Shush! So it was 2012 when I first
yes.
attended a UN meeting, no? The 20th anniversary of the Earth Summit. So it was called Rio Plus 20, and it was held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Yeah. How about you, Rina?
My experience is like the first time I came is actually 2007 in yes 2007 in Bali for COP 13. If you remember, it was like COP 13, and then I was like very not so young, but yeah, quite new, haven't born yet, and then also, and also I remember that time because we have some issue with registration, and then it was so intimidating for a lot of grassroots organization that came with me that time, coming from different part of Indonesia, the one that is actually dealing with the mining company like Newmont, dealing with a lot of palm oil plantation, dealing with forest fire. We came together, and then we didn't even like have managed to actually register on time and etc. And then there are some people that able to register, so for the rest of us we make them the spouse of that person that can register.
They should not
And it
marry
worked, man, it worked. So we were there, like it was amazing, amazing, amazing time. But yeah, the thing is like that's totally correct. I think that time it was also hard for the civil society, for the grassroots organization who never actually part of this process, to be able to understand what's going on, what is the process, how do we intervene, how do we actually ask question, is there any way for us. So a lot of us is actually feel that, oh, maybe we don't want to be inside, let's just go outside. So there are like that time, I forgot what do they call it. I think it's like something about kampung, like village. So we make a climate village where the civil society all there, and then there's huts where we can have discussion and etc. We prepare our rallies there, and etc. And then it's more or less intimidating space, although that it is like very only like 100 200 meter away from the venue, right? So that is the story from me. The spouse. Oh.
So how's your banana looking like now?
Oh, wow.
That's so pretty. Look at my failed attempt at art.
I'm trying.
So,
What should I do?
Hey, people out there, show us your drawings in your bananas or your mangoes while we talk. And I just wanted to say some things. Go back. So we are not part of the UN. We are there at the UN, and we can hear your comments, people out there. What do you think of the purpose of the UN. What do you think of Heri? You have to help me find the drag name for the banana. Um, so what do you think? Is it worth engaging in the UN because you think it can make a difference? From our perspective, yes, although it's very, very burdensome. And this is where my reflection on Guterres comes, because in the past, the UN has been very strong in really pushing for transformation. But maybe in the past 20 years, it has become super subservient towards the power, the powerful, the corporations, the rich countries, etc. And they have rather just accommodated themselves to say the politically correct things without real changes. So to me, Guterres is actually the worst, because you see, we are facing the most insane crisis in the humanity. I mean, really, people is thinking in 2 generations' time, our people is going to be living conditions of survival, just survival in 2 generations from now on. And we are seeing that the biodiversity and life in the planet is getting extincted now in our lifetime. So in that emergency, and then the pandemic hits, and it's hitting massively all of the economies, and millions of people are dying everywhere. And Guterres is just like, yeah, no, it's very difficult for a woman to come as as a secretary general, and I think I'm doing a good job. So not even that, not even the formality, nothing. And so no, he never managed to get anything ambitious on climate change, anything on the pandemic, anything on the vaccines, anything on anything really. And it's like he's like a ghost. He's just living there to not steer the ruffles of anybody. I think my drag queen is more radical.
But he says a lot of nice stuff lately, quite critical.
But what's the point? He's just saying that, but he's not doing anything. He's not really doing anything. So it's like a puppet.
I think that's also key. When we listen to governments taking the floor at the UN, they all seemingly say the right words to inspire people to believe in the UN, to believe in governments, that they are doing the right thing for people and planet. I'm almost convinced, when I hear the UN Secretary General making all of these big speeches that we cannot go back as usual, blah blah blah. But then there's a huge disconnect between what governments and institutions are saying when they take the floor to what are actually the policies that are implemented in our countries, no?
Yeah. And then it gets to me like for me it's like this. It gets to me also with our role, our role actually. We talk about how the space can be a little bit intimidating, but we actually have a role, no? We wear a different hats actually, right? When we are going to the UN, we are an activist, right? We are also an advocate. We are also a mobilizer, right? And then
There's a difference.
Yes, of course.
Like
And then
I wear all these hats at the same time.
Yeah, this is our segment already.
No, that's very important. What is the difference between being an activist, between an advocate, between a mobilizer, and a delegate? That's interesting, because all of us at some point have been different things, and people just think, oh, so you're at the UN, and some people say you're an activist. That means like the fiery side, the rebel, the impertinent one. And then
But
when
I was once a delegate of my government. No?
yeah, but
exactly.
let us go through let us unpack, right? Because the activist can be more wild, can say very tough things, very straightforward things. It's sending messages out there, like trying to shift with radical arguments. Whereas
Are they talking about Amelia, Rina, and Tetet?
yeah, but there is this other layer of an advocate. That is
Okay.
the technical role, right?
Oh my God. Look at the photo.
this is activist, yeah?
That's my hat.
can we stop the video for a moment just before to unpack the technicalities before we go to the fun part of the pictures? Because the activist is more is more wild, you know, whereas the advocate is more of a technical. You need to know your international language, you need to know your human rights document, you need to know the technical language on oceans or agriculture or technology or gender, etc.
Yeah.
And that technicality is very important on economy, on indigenous people's knowledge, on whatever. Those are very valuable knowledges, and that knowledge is very useful because when you are advising governments, you need to tell them why are you suggesting these issues, why are you suggesting this language. Adriana, could we stop the pictures for Thank you. Just wanted to-
Not yet, not yet, Adriana. Not yet.
Adriana was very excited with the video she worked. Thank you. But then, so that is the advocate, and then is the mobilizer, because we're working inside the UN, and that is more of an, let us say, a very short group. Even if sometimes we're in the hundreds, sometimes we're in the thousands, like in the CSW, in the Committee for the Status of Women. The mobilizer makes sure that out there things are happening. So we're organizing marches in the streets. We're organizing forums outside this village that Tete was saying, that is an autonomous, just for people without any registry to the UN. And we need to mobilize people so that they make their presence heard. And that is a totally new task for some of us. And then fourth, sometimes as civil society, we get included in delegations with our governments and support the negotiating position of our government, of our negotiating groups. And that is the least radical position you get. That is the more technical, because you cannot speak on behalf of civil society, of your radical thinking. You are supporting the position of your country, and you're actually helping your country to come up with all of these agendas, but within aligned with their national framework, their national laws, etc. So just wanted to make it all clear, because when you think I work at the UN and I'm an activist and trying to move things, it's like, yeah, but everybody can play a part. Not everybody needs to do all of those four things. Some have a better spirited for some on the other, but all of those
Yes.
are very important. We wanted to say that before we go into the exciting things of the picture. And yes, that you say
Can
you've
I
been
just add, when you said that sometimes we are also included in our country's official delegation to support with the negotiations, blah, blah. I remember the first time I was included as a member of the Philippine delegation to the climate talks. I was getting my badge in Durban and I was protesting, to the registration desk because they were giving me a pink badge that says party. I said, no, I am not a member of the party. I am civil society. So I was asserting that I am not government, I'm civil society. And then people behind me were just like, are you crazy? Some people would die to get that pink badge. And you are saying you don't like it? And then I said, oh yeah, come to think of it, no? That pink badge allowed me more access to the sessions where, civil society is not allowed. So it's like, doom, I have the pink badge and doors would suddenly open for me where usually we are not allowed to get into. So there's some benefit, no? Knowing the insides of the negotiations when you're part of the delegation team.
That's true. That's true. That's right. And then I never been in the delegation team actually, and I think that maybe for me like switching hats sometimes the three of it, as an activist, as an advocate, and also as a mobilizer. So that will be interesting, no, to actually know what kind of thing that we actually participated, like our experience in the UN. Oh my God, I want to know that.
People out there, let us know what are the roles you have played so far if you have engaged in the UN, or if you haven't, can you picture yourself in some of these? What is the status of your bananas and your mangoes at the moment?
I'm not
You
touching
don't
them.
listen.
I'm not touching my bananas. Oh
Me
my gosh,
too.
Amelia.
Another drag queen. Oh.
I
Because
need to
I'm
do this.
eating this tomorrow for breakfast.
Okay, I think we can go with the video, Adriana, because Adriana, actually, thank you, Adriana. She prepared this amazing video of images. And this is Tetet her first experience in Rio Plus 20. As you see, she's
That
mobile.
1992.
This is where she was born. She was born
And that
there.
is now Amelia
This
in
is
her
me reading
famous
the poetry
cornrows.
intervention in the open working group.
Yeah.
Wow, this is like when you read poetry, no? Yeah! Amelia, can we stop the video? Can we stop the video now?
Yeah.
Amelia, do you have the poetry with you?
Yeah.
Can we listen to it a little bit?
Wow. I need to let me go.
Okay. Next time, or maybe like you can look at it now. Oh my God, you look so fierce here, yeah.
I was
Damn.
really scared when I saw Amelia walking down the UN.
Yeah,
She
some
was
the person
even wearing boots.
who took this picture was like, you were very scary, but then you were reading the most beautiful text.
That's what happened here in this photo.
Yeah, that was in Bonn during the climate conference. And then the guy beside me was just singing praises to governments for all their efforts in the, ambitious climate action. My face is so transparent, you can tell, it's like, yeah. And then my intervention was all about, you governments don't know. Okay, now that's Amelia. Wearing a tutu.
My birthday, wearing a tutu at the COP, at the Paris negotiation, and I went with my tutu to the negotiation. So that was about the dress code at the UN. I've been wearing tutus, I've been wearing shorts, I've been wearing whatever comes to my mind with green, blue, purple, red, orange hair. But this is me being very proper in Morocco in the climate change 2016 negotiation.
What are you doing? You making a statement, or you just
Working very late at night.
Rina, what are you doing, Rina?
This is Cambodia, right? This is our picture in Cambodia. I remember. Oh my God, my hair is still.
What were we doing?
That time that we have like this Global South meeting with the women's group, yeah, remember, yeah, right? And then it's also part of how we engage, how we actually build together our solidarity among the Global South women to actually able to engage on the issue of macroeconomic and etc. In the UN also. So we are actually talking about that. Oh, my picture is just like that. Did you have the picture? This is coming from your camera. Whoa.
Inside the UN in Bonn for the climate change process as well. And she's doing this activist thing of hers. When she was sitting with the serious guide, she was there as a technical delegate. And here is she being an activist.
Wow. Yes, this is amazing. There's so many pictures of that like this, I can imagine.
And then if you want, let's just keep on the video rolling. We don't need to stop the more pictures.
Yeah.
That is me dressed as an Arab man in Egypt. And the women were like, why are you dressed like a man? And I'm like, this is so comfortable and elegant. No. But that was fun. And I just wanted to go back to some of the ideas.
Sure.
in the conversation, because there are many things that we can still discuss. And people, if you have any questions about how to engage with the UN, let us know. You need to. There are official seats in the UN. Tetet was meant to tell us all about that, but she got carried away by the excitement of the session and she forgot. But it's like, there are seats at the UN. Member states have a seat, a vote, and a voice, right? So civil society only gets to have a seat and a voice, but we don't get to have a vote. which is crucial, but still with the seat and the voice, we can do a lot. So sometimes it is called by major groups. So there are children and youth, women's major group, NGO major group. So you figure out which is the group you think you fit in most, that you engage there, and uh, and there are different ways to engage in different negotiations, but really this is the main dynamic, right? And this is why we officially also receive the papers of the UN. We get to sit inside the informal conversations. So it is, we are not inside the UN, we're not member states, but we have a role, an official role to play in the UN, right? So, and this is where we are also making a harsh critique against the UN. It's very patriarchal. It's really male dominated. And the women's major group decided we're going to run a campaign. When Guterres won, we needed a woman. And if we need to wear mustaches, then women are going to wear mustaches. So we added mustaches to the SDGs, to everything. And that was, and then we went to outside to the world and wore mustaches too in our protest inside the UN.
Hey,
So
we have a question here. What can you say to the people that criticize your presence in this meeting, alleging that the fight has to be done out of the system?
aha,
Anyone?
who wants to take on that one?
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, like,
I can try.
okay, go ahead, Tetet.
Segment. I think there is a value, no, to fighting in the streets, being on the ground, but also at the same time trying to advocate for the macro solutions, and hold governments as duty bearers. They have a responsibility to uphold the human rights of everyone. And when they're not doing that, we have to take them to task. We have to call them out. And that is what we do when we engage in the UN. We try to set the bar high so that governments are always reminded that these are the minimum that they should do in order to meet their obligations for human rights. We also monitor what they're doing. That's why civil society are watchdogs. We also propose our alternative visions, just so they're reminded that, if you are really representatives of the people, then this is what we're saying. This is our position on certain things. But sometimes governments can easily forget that they are, elected representatives of the people. That's why.
What is duty bearers? It's like you're very formal and people here may not know. It's like, really lighten up. What is duty bearer?
They have a duty to deliver on our fundamental human rights. They bear the
Yay!
responsibility,
Yay!
right to food, right to health, housing, education. But they're not doing that, obviously. So we need strong voices in the inside, in the UN, to do those things, set the bar high, monitor, accountability, etc. But we need the movements outside, to push for all of these demands. So we try to create that, to bring the voices of people who are not able to access these UN spaces and be the, bring their voices inside. But at the same time, we also try to explain to people what all of these technical decisions are actually mean, or what they don't actually mean. And that's how we also build and strengthen our movements. Did
Yeah.
I answer?
Yeah, yeah. Can I add? Like so many add. Like for me, it's like this. Sometimes it gets frustrating, especially a lot of us, many of us, is actually coming from activists, right? And then we got into that space when we are not necessarily we can from time to time, but not always be able to speak our mind freely or etc. We need to also have like the right words to things, being advocates, right, and etc. So I remember this one time that like my organization in APWLD, we actually work with the grassroots women. So there's migrants group, indigenous peoples group, rural women, and etc. So we negotiating for this 2030 agenda. This is after the before the adoption, right? And then when the 2030 agenda adopted in 2015, we were so disappointed with the outcome. Actually, we're not happy with the outcome, right? We got frustrated, we got, etc. And then that time, we sort of like having like this, or maybe we shouldn't engage anymore, with the UN. How about that? Like maybe this is not good for us. Maybe this is not a good strategy. But then it's actually our member who are coming from this migrants group, and they actually the one who say, no, because we need to claim the space there, right? And then they're really saying that like if we're leaving, if we just left, it's going to be another, like very mellow, what kind of pro-government civil society that is going to be there, and then no one is actually really tell about what's happening in the ground. So that is why I think that is kind of answer, like which inspire me and then motivate me to do this, right? If not, like maybe we all got frustrated. And remember, our work is not really, success is not really coming from the outcome document of the UN, but it's actually how we mobilize people inside it also, right? So yeah, so my take is like that. Yeah.
Was there ever a
Yeah,
chance?
don't be busy. You're busy like with your art, and then none of us is actually doing much.
Yeah, like, why are you throwing? I don't understand.
I know.
When did you have the opportunity to draw on a fruit? Tell me. Now is the time. Now is the most precious opportunity to do that. I don't understand why you're not. People out there, what do you think? What are you
My
drawing?
Sharpie is like not working.
You know,
You know, was
draw,
there
draw.
ever what was your
This is
most
our segment.
unforgettable experience in the UN?
I just want to invite people, draw your banana, your mango, send us a picture, and use the hashtag global demand. Follow us on the page of Campaigns of Campaigns and all of the social media, please.
I'm holding on to these bananas for breakfast.
Yeah, but oh, you're so boring. Why don't you why you're not drawing?
But I already have my nice mango here, you see. That's the best that I can make.
Get it
Cross-eyed
closer to
mango.
the camera. Get it closer to
I'm doing it now. I'm doing it now.
the
That's my best. Just make me write statements or deliver statements.
Ah.
Make me draw.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I haven't told you that my first time was in the CSW in 2007, which is the Commission of the Status of Women. And I was told you need to volunteer to all of the working teams, and you need to stay late. If you volunteer in every team, you make sure your language gets there. So I was like, okay. So I was lifting my hand for every working group out there, and I was exhausted. So the CSW is 2 weeks, right? So I was told if you're inside the plenary, you're not working. The real work is happening outside. And I was like, okay. So on the final day, my boss and I were working at the UN. We were leaving. And she said, did you ever make it inside the plenary? And I was like, no, I was working. I was sitting in the hallways. I was talking to delegates. I was drafting papers. And she was like, this is the final day, Emilia. Go inside and run to see the plenary. And I was like, thank you. I never even thought about it because I was like, I need to be really productive. I need to change the world. So I was at the cafeteria, in the hallway, sitting on the floors, going everywhere, going to the offices, crossing the streets to the missions. I never made it to the plenary. And on the final day, she was like, we have 10 minutes before we leave for boarding our flight. So run. So I was running to get inside the room. You know how obsessed people. Oh, I just wanted to share. This is the Mexican delegation stuff, but what we saw on the screen is the official language. That's how negotiation happened. They have the paragraphs and they discuss whether we're going to use this word or that word. So also learning literature was very useful for me. And
Wow.
psychoanalysis, it's like
Amelia, is that you? When
Yeah.
is that?
that is
You can tell the year by the color of her hair.
That is Latin America. So I remember one person, I was wearing that skirt and I was talking in the hallways, and she came to me and said, your outfit is amazing. I can't believe the colorful. And I was like, you're making me lose my thread of thought. Leave me alone. Woman. Don't talk to me about my outfit. We're dealing here with world issues. Don't let us not talk about that. Oh, but the right wing comes and takes pictures of us so that they share it around them, so that they follow us in the UN, try to steal our content, our material, so that they know what we are doing, right? So that's what they've been doing for ages in the UN. And the first time I was working on a negotiated document from our point of view, a woman from the right wing came and said, "Oh, I love your outfit. Can I take a picture of you?" Because, they have this album of photos of people they need to follow. And I was so proud. I was like, yes, of course. I was posing because
Oh my God.
I was super proud of making it to the album of the right wing of this is, you need to watch out of her, follow her wherever she goes. And I'm like, yes, yes, please. I'm now making history in the annals of the right wing album.
So, interested what you said about the right wing and etc. So we know that the civil society is not homogeneous, right? Like like different position, different ways of working, also different politics. How do you both of you deal with that? What is actually your strategy? How do you identify this kind of right wing groups and etc.? Who wants to take it, Amelia or Tete?
That's it.
Well, I think in the UN, you associate with like-minded groups. Like for instance, already that the women's major group, what's the analysis, how they view things, their demands. So you know that you can identify yourself with that particular group. So you tend to gravitate towards like-minded, no? So at the moment, there are several constituencies. Usually, my observation is that these are the most rooted with the movements who kind of like share the same worldview and demands. No, so for instance, in the different major groups, the women, indigenous peoples, workers, and trade unions, no, NGOs, they have more in common. Is that right?
Well, I detect the right wing by wearing pearls and conservative clothing and boring clothing, and our people is more, like alive and,
Hair color, tutu.
I remember in the climate negotiations, every time there was this group that hands out free sandwiches. So of course, we are poor, starving civil society. So we would
Activists.
sandwiches.
yes, and chocolate.
Yes, chocolates. But then the sandwiches are come with a big book of birds, no, very colorful, and also the face of the leader of this cult. No, so this is like a right wing group using food to lure people to get their big books. But then what's funny is the sandwiches get finished during the day, and then you will see all of those big colorful books just out in the everywhere. People leave the books and take the sandwiches.
Of
So
course.
we associate with the right wing because of the food that they give, the free food they give.
Okay.
Yay.
Now it's blue hair. How about you, Emilia? What do you think about making allies within the groups?
I like within. No, I'm a very strong-headed person, so I don't talk to people I don't agree with. So, I mean, meaning,
Why are we talking then that time and then it's actually okay?
no, I mean,
We talk
I'm
to
saying
government and we don't agree with them most of the time.
no. I mean, if we are in a political project, I need to be surrounded with people who's going to be promoting the same thing. So
Yeah.
I don't waste my time trying to convince a right winger inside the UN. Look, you see, this is the right. These are the rights of women. I'm there to talk about like-minded people so that we can strategize and move member states who will have a decision-making role. I don't try to change persons. I try to change systems. So I really don't waste my time with people on their own ideas. I just state mine, and I'm very blunt and I'm very straightforward everywhere. And people say, why are you bringing your message so harshly? It's like the message is not going to be received. And I'm like, really, I don't want my message to be received. I just want to state what I think. My work as an activist allows me to be strategic on where I want to move and shift positions. And that is in an official process. That is in political in processes in Mexico. That is in normative framings, public policies, budgets. I try to use my efforts on changing positions in places where matter. I will never try to change a position of a person. So I'm just going to be blunt and tell you, what you're saying makes no sense, and what you're saying is useless. What you're saying is harmful, and people take it to super bad and say like, well, if you were say it in a different manner, maybe you would convince me. And I'm like, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I really. Because person to person is not going to change the world. It's big structural processes that are going to change the world. So I don't waste my time trying to change people's minds. And this is where I also surround myself with like-minded people, even like-minded super radical that let's dismantle the entire system and the capitalistic system. And I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do that this year. So it can be even that challenging to me. I'm not saying only people with my narrow frame of mind, but really a spectrum of ideas that are also propositive of structural change and this type of radical change that I want to see. If anybody comes to say that women's rights should be limited, restricted, that militarism is good for something, I'm like, I'm not gonna sit down to talk to you about making joint proposals, because really there is no sense for me to do that.
I don't know whether that it is your Facebook, Amelia. I remember that one time I saw you wrote, what is it? Like, agree. We can agree to disagree about having coffee or tea or which one that you like, but you cannot, agree to disagree about, capitalism or
Yeah,
foreign occupation or something like that, right? So it's
because people
totally
is
true.
like, yeah, no, it's a diversity. You're being intolerant. You're being fascist with fascism. It's like, no, I'm being radical. Fascism should be eradicated from the face of earth, and that is human rights language.
Yeah.
Language of hate should not exist. So I'm not being fascist with fascism. I'm trying to eradicate fascism, because fascism is really harmful for the world and the quality of life. So I get very heated with this, because I'm not gonna think to that every opinion is the same, that your opinion matters the same way as mine. No, if your opinion is harming someone else, then that opinion should not be expressed. You should go to jail, or at least you should keep your mouth shut, period. That's
Spice Girls, the Spice Girl. Period. Wow, I remember this one. That is Ground Level People's Forum.
Yes.
That's so nice.
Yeah, this is the first picture of the Spice Girls ever. That is a historical picture.
Yeah.
And that's the sticker.
Oh, this is the cape that we are talking about last time, no?
Yes. So suddenly that sticker was on everyone's laptops, no?
We were famous that year, Tete.
I know.
That's amazing. Yeah, this is like our woman major group also. Ooh! What is that model?
Can we pause that one? Can we pause? No, the photo where we were working the stairs, it was during the last moments of the climate negotiations where everything was just suspended. No, governments were still in deadlock. They could not reach any agreement. And so we said, okay, we are not going to leave. We are going to stay until the very end. But what to do? So we goof around. No, we work the stairs, and suddenly even some government delegates were taking our photos.
No, but serious things can happen in those negotiations. I remember in South Africa, the COP in South Africa, and the chair of the negotiation never gave word to the Russian delegate. So the next year, and the Russian delegate, the chair was like, it is everybody in agreement, and the Russian delegate was no, 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 I want to speak, and the African chair decided not to listen to the Russian delegate because it would mean opening up the negotiated document again. So she was like, okay, I see no one. And the Russian delegate runs towards the podium and he started to jump in front of the African chair and it was like, I want to speak, I want to speak. And she was like, I see no one. It is so decided. And she gavels the table. And
Oh, wow.
in South Africa, in the middle, it was like 4 a.m. in the morning. So the next session in Bonn in climate change, it was an intermediary session to discuss, okay, so how are we going to follow up with this? Russia came and said, I want to submit a point so that we address why I was never given the floor. And so they were like, okay, but we need to inaugurate the session so that you can add an issue in the agenda. And Russia was like, no, I wanted to be added before we inaugurate the session. It was a protocol. And the others, yes, we will add it, but we need to inaugurate the session. And the Russian was like, if we don't add my point, we are not going to inaugurate the session. So officially, formally, you could not do what the Russian officer was doing. But since Russia was super upset that they would never be able to talk in South Africa, they stopped the negotiation for 2 weeks. We were in Bonn for 2 weeks without even inaugurating the session. Never inaugurating the session. Climate change, people, that's how insane governments deal with these issues. Everybody's super worried about climate change, the world is gonna end, so happy that governments are doing their job. Really, this is why we need to be there in doing things, because it's like madness the way they behave, really.
Yeah, that's true.
But even if we're allowed in some spaces, anytime a member state says we don't want civil society observers in the room, they can easily kick us out. So
Yeah.
that's how fragile our participation is in these spaces. And I remember at the last climate negotiations a couple of weeks ago only, it was virtual. It was already virtual. One member state said, we don't want civil society observers present in the negotiations on transparency. So it's like, what does?
What kind of transparency is that?
Actually, that negotiations on transparency was
Yeah.
not transparent at all. So it's like, oh my gosh, this is how it feels like. It's a virtual space, but I still get kicked out. No, it's crazy.
Yeah. So I
And
want to do my segment, my weather report before
yeah.
since we are
What's the
running out
weather
of time.
forecast?
No, we're running out of time. So I'm just going to be very short. I just want to say that there is a new volcano rising, which may cause some disturbances, some earthquakes around, but this is the volcano of social movements within the campaign of campaigns. So rising is causing a lot of disturbances. People, we need you to follow us on our social media. And a lot of earthquakes are happening inside the social movements, but also in our relationship with governments, because people is not acquainted to engage with the different movements, amongst movements, talking to governments, talking to the UN. So the earthquakes are very harsh at the moment. We're feeling our floors being moved around underneath our feet. But stay tuned for the explosion of lava that is going to come with freedoms and human rights and transformation once that volcano comes to a full eruption. So,
Whoa!
That is so powerful.
We want you to rise up. Rise up. Yay!
Wow, it's
Any,
almost been an hour already, no?
Already.
Oh,
any
Mm.
closing thoughts for the people? Why is people so quiet today? Send us your message. Send
Oh,
us your emails. Send us what is it that you want to talk about. The next session of the Despise Girls is in 15 days, and we will have a dance special for you. It
oh
will
no.
also and activism. Dance and
things
activism.
we
We
do
will
for the cause.
the dead workout mechanism. How is it that we can start dancing and engaging with our art in activism while we are engaging in global agendas? So the third session is July
July
22.
22.
So
Save the date.
send us your questions, your suggestions. What do you want to do? And just before leaving, these are my drag queens.
Oh,
Oh, let me
wow.
see my drag queens. And this is
I'm so
an
lonely.
abstract work of
Oh
art.
my god. That's so
Look, I'm so lonely with my mango.
I'm gonna eat it.
Okay, people.
See
Thank
ya.
See you next time. Bye.